Chapter 13. Readings. Dorian stood beside a bench in the placia overlooking the valley. She was wearing a cotton peasant dress instead of the baggy pants she'd worn since they'd arrived. Her hands were braced against her hips. As Indy crossed the park towards her, she reminded him of a Greek statue. He stopped a few feet away and cleared his throat. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better." She didn't turn her gaze from the valley. The intensity in her eyes led Indy to believe she was watching something in particular, but all he could see was scenery. Great scenery, yes, but nothing that he or anyone else would stare at like she was. "What do you see down there?" he asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. "History, culture, the past." Her voice was soft, distant. Indy glanced out over the valley. It had been 2 days since Panos had carried her from the temple. She had slept for 11 hours, and when she awakened, a doctor examined her but found nothing wrong. He'd said she was probably suffering from stress and overwork and needed a rest. However, by noon the following day, she'd gone to the workshop, which was near the ruins, and had stayed until 9. She seemed detached, as if only part of her were present. Was it just exhaustion, or the vapors? He'd been thinking a lot about it. It was both, he'd decided. She must have been fighting off exhaustion for days, and the vapors, or at least Dorian's suspicions about them, had triggered her collapse, a nervous breakdown. "Well, Joan," she said, turning away from the valley, "we can't just spend our entire morning in the park. We've got work to do." "You sure you're up to it?" She straightened her back. "I'm feeling fine." "Make that great." "I'm feeling great." The sudden change in her mood, her energy, surprised him. It was as if she'd just awakened from a dream. "What are we going to do?" She looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Don't you know that we have to get the tablet out of the fissure as soon as possible? We've wasted too much time as it is. I want the tablet cleaned and on display by the time the king arrives the day after tomorrow." "Aren't you rushing things a bit? I thought archaeology was slow and detailed work." She smiled at him. "It is, but we have an emergency. Every hour that tablet remains in the crevice, the danger of losing it increases." Now she was sounding as anxious as he had been before she walked into the vapors. "Why do you want to show it to the king?" he asked. "Don't you think his trip here might be a way of harassing you for coming back?" She laughed. "Come on now." "What's so funny?" "The king may be petty, but he doesn't change his plans and take emergency trips because of someone like me. I really doubt that he even knows I'm here." "You don't think there's any danger now from your family's political enemies?" She shook her head. "No, especially not in Delphi. Don't worry. We're safe, and when the king sees the new find, he'll see that even earthquakes have a good side to them." Indy shrugged, still perplexed by the sudden urgency to remove the tablet and her benign attitude towards the king. "So what do you want me to do?" "Everything is being prepared. You will be making the descent right at noon." "What about the vapors?" he asked. She brushed her mane of thick dark hair off her shoulders. "I've taken them into account. This morning they were at 9:03 a.m., 5 hours and 35 minutes after the last rising, an increase of 6 minutes in the interval, the same pattern." He took out his pocket watch and started to calculate the next rising. She watched him a moment, then said, "At 2:44, you'll have plenty of time. All you have to do is set the net in place over the tablet and chip away the earth at the base of it." "What do the vapors start early?" He was curious about her reaction, since she'd said little about her experience. "We have no reason to believe that they won't continue to follow the pattern," she answered, evading the intent of his question. Andy glanced at his pocket watch again, then put it away. It was 10:35. He wondered what they were going to do until noon. I suppose I should get some rest before noon. You going back to the hotel? If she recognized his sly overture, she didn't show it. I said we have work to attend to, Jones. Let's go to the workshop. I want to go over the tools with you. She walked at a quick pace towards the hotel where the horses were hitched. Coming, Jones? She called over her shoulder. He tugged at his fedora and strode after her. Hey, what about Dumas? Indy asked as they mounted their horses. She frowned. What about him? I heard he was against my going down for the tablet. She waved a hand. Oh, he's over that now. It was just a matter of wounded pride. Indy nodded, but he couldn't help thinking about Dumas's connection with the Order of Pythia. As they rode out of town, he wondered if the archaeologist was as interested as Panos and his son in protecting Dorian from outsiders. If so, going into the crevice with him anywhere in the area could be dangerous. But Dumas was also interested in the tablet, he rationalized, and probably would do nothing to endanger its recovery. They'd ridden almost halfway to the workshop when Indy spotted the lone figure standing on the roadside. As they neared him, he saw it was the old man in the Greek sailor hat who had talked to him in the taverna. The crazy one. With everything else that had happened since that night, he'd forgotten about him. He tried to recall what the man had said to him. Something about Pythia. She would swallow him. That was it. Now it meant considerably more than it had at the time. Still, it was probably just an old-timer's barroom babble. The old man stared as they cantered by. Do you know him? Indy asked. She smiled, and it was obvious that she did. He's no one to be concerned about. I've heard he's a member of the Order of Pythia, and that he's made predictions. She laughed and shook her head. Maybe that's why he's known as the village fool. No one takes him seriously. As if to tell him she didn't want to talk about the old man any longer, she prodded the sides of her horse and galloped ahead. Indy chased her all the way to the stable, where they left the horses, then walked to the nearby workshop. It was a wood-framed building that looked on the inside like a dusty, poorly lit library. But instead of books, the rows of shelves held artifacts. As far as he could tell, none was the type of ancient handiwork that would interest treasure hunters. No gold, silver, or valuable stones. No sign of a single piece of the vast treasure that Croesus had donated for a single reading. 117 bricks of precious metals, a gold lion weighing 570 pounds, a 4.5-foot statue of his pastry cook, and a variety of other treasures. The entire fortune had long ago vanished, claimed by emperors and kings and others. Nero alone had stolen 500 gold statues from Delphi. Most of the shelves were stacked with row after row of hand-sized tablets on which were inscribed ancient readings. A dozen or so were laid out on the long table where Dorian did most of her work. Been catching up on your reading? Indy asked as he ran his fingers over one of the tablets. I read a couple of 100 tablets yesterday, she said. Why? I haven't read any of them for years. It's good to refresh myself from time to time on the nature of the readings. Indy picked up one of the tablets and translated the ancient Greek. It was a mundane reading regarding a merchant's plan to sell 600 bales of wool to a new customer. The oracle had told him to hold firm on his price, then drop it slightly before sealing the bargain, and he would establish a strong, profitable relationship with the customer that would last years. He laid the tablet down, wondering what Dorian could gain from reading such material. Maybe it was simply a way of relaxing after her breakdown. He was interested in hearing about her experience, but the only time he'd broached the subject, she had said nothing to reveal her thoughts about the matter. He watched her as she removed a shoulder bag from a locker and carried it over to the table. She spread out 6 picks with heads of different lengths and explained that all of them originally had been the same size, but were worn by use. Many archaeologists prefer to use trowels because they cause less damage to artifacts, but I found that if you're careful, the pick is a much handier tool. Go ahead and take one. Indy ran the point of the one he selected over his palm. You sure I won't damage the tablet? Not unless you hit it. Take your time and work around the base. From what's visible, I'd say that about 6 to 8 inches of it is buried. You don't have to go very close to it. Why did they use large tablets sometimes and smaller ones other times? He asked. Most of the readings were recorded on small ones, but important readings that were not for one individual but for everyone were sometimes inscribed on larger tablets like the one you'll recover. Indy pointed to a set of brushes inside her bag and asked if he would need one. She shook her head. The tablet will be cleaned after it is out of the hole. She reached into the bag and picked up a brush with wiry bristles. But take this one just in case you hit something unexpected. And before I forget, here's a torch holder and a mallet to pound it into the wall. As Indy placed each of the tools into his knapsack, Dorian looked around as if she were missing something. Stephanos must have taken the ropes and net already. One rope goes around you, of course, and the other is for the tablet. Cover the tablet with the net as soon as you're down, and then attach the hooks at the opening to the loop at the end of the rope. I think I can handle that. The way she was treating him was annoying. Maybe he didn't have experience, but he wasn't an imbecile, and he knew how to attach hooks to a rope. Any questions? Don't think so. She pursed her lips. He couldn't read her expression. This may seem very elementary to you, but what I've been telling you can make a difference between success and failure. I don't want you to get down there and not know what to do, or worse, do it the wrong way. How long should it take? You're not going to be able to work comfortably dangling at the end of a rope for very long. We'll pull you up after 45 minutes. Then, if you're up to it, we'll send you down again after a 15-minute rest. Maybe I'll finish the first time down. She grinned. Don't count on it. Working in that position won't be easy. If you haven't finished by the second period, we'll wait until after the vapors have cleared and try again around 3 o'clock. So the vapors are dangerous? She zipped her shoulder bag shut. It would be difficult working in the vapors, don't you think? She was hedging, he thought. Yes, especially if they're dangerous. She carried the bag over to her locker and put it away. It was time to press her. What do you remember? She walked back and stopped in front of him. Pardon me? In the vapors. What happened? Her eyes shifted from him to the row of tablets on the table. I'm not sure, Indy. Her voice was suddenly weary. I guess I've been avoiding thinking too much about it. It was the first time she'd called him Indy since they'd arrived in Delphi. It might be a good idea to remember. She nodded, then slowly turned to face him. I remember entering the mist, inhaling and thinking that there was nothing mephitic at all about it, that it was harmless. In fact, now that I think about it, I felt good, better than I have for a very long time. But you passed out. I don't remember anything else. Maybe you were reacting to your relief that the vapors were harmless, he suggested. You were tired. You overworked yourself, and that's all it took. That's possible, I suppose, but I'm not the fainting sort. The other explanation, of course, is that the vapors were the cause. Indy made a face. More than ever, he suspected Dorian was prone to the same sort of fascination with the mystical that consumed her father, or his father. Think about it. If the vapors were dangerous, then the man who carried you out, Panos, would have suffered a similar reaction. I'm sure he didn't hold his breath like Nikos. He was in there too long. A floorboard creaked behind them, and they both turned. Dumas was standing inside the doorway. It's almost noon, Dr. Bellakamis. Dorian straightened and nodded. Yes, I think we're ready. Dorian watched the top of Jones's fedora vanish into the fissure as Dumas and two of his assistants slowly threaded the rope through their hands. Soon they would have the tablet. It might prove interesting, but was probably nothing of consequence. The excavation of Delphi, for all practical matters, was over. Anything that was found would probably only reaffirm what was already known. Of course, she hadn't told that to Jones, and in his naivete he had followed her here thinking that he would be involved in a major discovery. But Jones would play an important role, and soon. He had no idea how important. Alex's ally in the king's office had done his job perfectly. Everything had worked out fine. The king had been persuaded. If anything, she was surprised with the swiftness of the decision. Yet, she was having a hard time focusing on Alex's mission, which was exactly it, she thought. Alex's mission, not hers. Not really. The vapors had changed everything. By the time she had walked into the vapors, the mystery of the oracle had dominated her thoughts. That in itself was odd. She had never really thought of the oracle as a mystery. It was a phenomenon of ancient times, of a pre-scientific era. Yet now she saw it as something more, as a phenomenon with a future as well as a past. But maybe this was all wrong. Was it really possible that she could be Pythia? She needed to talk to Panos. That was critical, but she had to make sure that no one saw them. Can I help? Dorian's head jerked around. Standing behind her and to one side was a young Greek she'd seen in the village. What are you doing here? That's Panos' son, Dumas said. Come on over here, Grigoris, and help with the rope. Dorian watched suspiciously. Suddenly the rope went slack and Dumas yelled down to Jones. He must be there by now, Dorian said. Dumas shook his head. No, he hasn't gone far enough yet. Then pull it tight, she barked, thinking that Jones must have wedged himself between the walls. Hurry up! But Dumas didn't react fast enough, and the rope snapped taut with a twang. Dorian leaned over the crevice and called down to Jones. He answered after a moment that he was all right, but that he had lost his torch. Another one was quickly fastened to the rope that was intended for the tablet and sent down. When Jones signaled that he had the torch, Dumas and the others resumed lowering him. Be careful with him, Dorian cautioned. It wasn't long before Jones called out that he had spotted the tablet, and they slowly lowered him the rest of the way. Dorian paced back and forth along the crevice. If Jones was lucky, he might be able to complete the job and return to the surface within half an hour. A lot depended on how difficult he found the work. If her primary concern had been the tablet, she would never have let him go after it. Although he had a good mind and was surprisingly well informed about archaeology, he lacked experience. Of course, Dumas had been right about him. He was unqualified. She'd chosen him for the task, though, because she realized that she had to create a challenge for him, or his interest would fade and he might return to Paris in disgust. She couldn't let that happen. Not now. He was too much a part of her plan. She was near the far end of the chasm when she heard an excited exchange of words between Dumas and the others. Jones couldn't have loosened the tablet already. Not that fast. Not unless it was cracked and had broken. When she reached the men, Dumas was holding one of the ropes in his hand as it dangled loosely above the hole. What happened? She yelled. Dr. Bellacamus, the rope broke. I don't know how it happened. Which rope? She demanded. The one Jones was on, Dumas answered. What? No! She dropped to her knees and peered into the chasm, but she could see only blackness. She grabbed the rope from Dumas and quickly pulled it to the surface. It looked as if it had been cut part way through, then rubbed in the dirt to look as if it were frayed. She stood up and held out the rope accusingly. The bastard Grigoris was smirking. She swore he was, though his expression was blank. And Dumas? He rocked from side to side as though he would tumble over if he didn't keep adjusting his balance. Then she suddenly remembered the other rope. Maybe Jones had grabbed it when the first one snapped. She scanned the ground, but it wasn't there. Where is the other one? The other rope? Dumas glanced at Grigoris. He lost it. In the excitement. Just then she heard a sound she couldn't believe coming from the crevice. She dropped to her knees and cupped her hands at the mouth. Indy! Can you hear me? His voice sounded distant, strained. Yeah, I can hear you. Are you all right? He didn't answer for a moment. Not really. Get me a rope, fast. Okay, where are you? She yelled. Hanging on the tablet, but I don't know how much longer it's going to hold me. Dorian glanced over her shoulder at Dumas. Stephanos, hurry! A rope! Dumas looked around as if he expected to see one lying nearby. I'll have to go back. There's one in the stable. Well, don't stand there, damn it! Get it! Fast! Run to the stable, Grigoris, Dumas said. Quick! Get the rope hanging on the hook by the door. I didn't tell you to send him for it, Dorian snapped, but Dumas was already waddling after the villager who had scampered away. Close behind him were his assistants. Neither of them apparently wanted to stay with her. She wondered why not. Shaking her head, she turned back to the hole. It's coming, Jones. In a couple of minutes. She should have gotten the rope herself. She didn't trust any of them. There was no reply. Jones, are you okay? Again, no reply. If he had fallen, wouldn't he have yelled? Indy, answer me! Yeah, a faint voice responded after a long moment. Hurry! And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.